This is LTV.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Inside Leominster. And this Orchard Hill Park project, which is one of several projects that have happened over a couple of years, has really piqued some interest in by residents of the city, by everyone. And so I was at a function, and on the other side of, there were two lines. I don't know if we were eating or what happened, but on the other side of the line, gentleman ducks his head down, he looks over, he says, "Excellent job on that Orchard Hill." And I said, "What do you mean? Like, what about Orchard Hill?" He says, "That whole, how you've been explaining it on your morning briefing." And I've got to say, I don't know that even the landfill issue didn't get as much attention in terms of people saying to me, "Can you explain this?" Or after clarifying some of the information that's out there, can you do more of that, because more of it keeps getting circulated. And oh, by the way, I was at a function and out of town actually, and heard they're going to build 2,000 housing units up there at Orchard Hill, and so I've never been pulled in so many different directions about one big project. And we have a new $130 million school project going on at Fallbrook, and it's generated a little bit of conversation, but nothing like this. So as we started to have conversations about this, and I've been there 32 years, I'll be starting my 33rd in January, and I thought, this whole Orchard Hill project, it's got a lot of history to it. So I asked Wendy to come on with me today, Wendy Wiiks, Grand Administrator for the city, and we've been having these conversations with others, and even some of the retired people who have worked for the city, and said, and then I started thinking about it. I'm like, there's a whole history behind this property, and this isn't we're talking about 40 years ago or 50 years ago, as if we were in the middle of it, but we can certainly share some of that history with you. But we have 32 years of personal history involved in this particular piece of property in this area. So I thought, why not sort of share that? So Wendy's with me today. Thanks, Wendy. She's going to keep me in check here so that I don't drift off. And I guess let's start at Derby Farm.
This project predates you.
It predates me. Yes, there are kids out there saying I was in nursery school when they first talked about Mayor Mazzarella, and then he gave me his diploma. Anyway, let's start with the let's start. Can we start with Derby Farm?
Sure.
Yeah, let's start with Derby Farm.
So Derby Farm, I think people know that was formerly Orchard Hill, where the Target is now. That area.
Wood Bridge. There was a wood bridge that went over the railroad tracks there, and I forget what year it was. I don't know if you have that historically, but somebody set it on fire. And there are many, many, many stories about who started the fire. There's all those sort of urban myths about things like that. But go ahead.
So the Fitzgeralds own the property.
Are we going to see a slide here?
Yep.
Okay. Let's do it.
Sorry.
Slides keep me.
I forgot that I have the clicker.
Slides keep me in check here.
So 1988, I was a junior in high school. Mm-hmm. The Mayor Perla I believe, was the mayor then.
Yep.
And there was a goal to get sewer up to the Harvard Street area and Pioneer Park in particular, because the businesses in Pioneer Park were spending, $100,000 a year to ship off their sewer and everything
Right, so
else.
all those manufacturers that were up there generating jobs and taxes, and let me just explain, the soil contents of where some of those businesses were made it so unaffordable to build septic systems that they were hauling the waste out of town, or just hauling it out.
So there was all of that, trying to get sewer up there. It's a long way. You can tell the story after, how standing on the hill. And
Yes, standing on the hill.
And there was also a proposal by Digital to locate just over the Leominster-Lancaster
Right, they were
line.
going to build a sizable campus project there. Go ahead.
So there's the Orchard Hill site, as we know it today, at the build-out, and the proposed Digital site is down in the right-hand corner. So in 1988, the city got a promised CDAG grant, which is Community Development Action Grant, from the state for $1 million, which was a really big deal back then.
At the time, that's a lot of money.
And
Sure.
it had to be matched. So Digital agreed to match it. So that was $2 million.
Right.
And then Digital paid for the design of this sewer pipe to come up to at least most of the way to the Digital site. So things weren't going well with the economy, and Digital made other decisions, and they eventually pulled out a couple years later. And then the state withdrew the $1 million
So the
CDAG.
Digital said, I don't know whether it was taking too long or whatever happened, the politics behind it, we're out. State said, Digital's out, we're out.
We're out.
Okay.
Because they have a lot of competing interests all
Sure.
over the state, so
Right.
they need to use this money somewhere else. So, fast forward, now
Yes.
you're the mayor.
Well, I think one of the big things that happened, and this certainly was eye-opening for me, was that we had another campus-style development that wanted to go there. And so we get into the property, and we start, walking and talking, and they asked where the infrastructure was. And I said, water, sewer, electricity's over there. And so I pointed down towards the mall. Now, they're not familiar with it, but I said, see that blinking tower? Because you could see the blinking tower. I said, see that blinking tower? Yeah. That's approximately where the infrastructure is. And they sort of looked at me as if, well, that's a long way. It wasn't much longer after that we began to use the term shovel-ready. Shovel-ready because one of the biggest complaints for economic development in Massachusetts is getting infrastructure in. And this was happening already all over the country and other places that were really aggressive about economic development in places like Virginia and Delaware and North Carolina. They were really getting aggressive, and they were bringing infrastructure into their properties so that when someone was interested in the property, the infrastructure was there. That was no longer most people wanted to be in their business, their business plan was 24 months, not, 5 years to make this happen. So, I don't know, do you have another slide to go to and we can
Yep.
sort of explain? So then we realized that, we took a step back, we got Roger Brooks involved, he was the business manager at for the city of Leominster. That project didn't materialize. We had others looking at the property, but it was always the same thing. It was always the infrastructure was an issue. It wasn't shovel ready. They couldn't just start the project, go through the necessary permits, which in Massachusetts is already cumbersome. So they went elsewhere. So we started out with this 5-step sewer project. And believe it or not, I call it the over the river and through the woods, because literally we took the sewer line from the mall. If you're driving through that backside of the mall, there's a pumping station down there. And what happens is that's the low point, so everything is sort of fed through that pumping station. And then pumped over to the treatment plant. So we took that sewer line from that pumping station, and we went literally under the river, under the Nashua River. We then went up Mohawk Drive. We took a left, and we had to, the contractor had to bring in special equipment because he had to dig deep, but he also was limited by height because there's two bridges. Route 2 and 190 is right where that all comes together. So we had to go under those two. Then we took a right on Lawrence Street, and we went up to the to as far as the Tennessee Valley gas line. Now this is just a sewer project. Now if you can imagine what it's like working with the utilities, this is Tennessee Valley gas line. That was a major. Now that's nobody. You can't mess with that. You know, you hit that thing, and that's major. Catastrophic results if something like that should happen up in that area. So to get that sewer line, so we had to run along National Grid. We had to run along the railroad tracks. So these are easements. All this work had to be worked out with these people to get easements.
And other private properties.
And private properties along the way. So now we continued on, building pumping stations along the way. Then we got up around Ridgewood Drive in that area, and we had to cut through Mountain View Lane there. What's it called? Mountain View. What's it called? Mountain View Road. Tucker Hazard lives up there. Charlie Gito lived up. So we had to cut through from the backside of their properties and cut through so we could get to Ridgewood. Then we went down to Ridgewood, and then we ended up eventually connecting up on, I think, White Street, or in that area, we ended up connecting onto Harvard Street. I know this is a very long story, but it's quite a story. It's probably the biggest infrastructure project to ever, and the most complicated one to ever happen in the city's history. And this is all to get infrastructure for a couple of different reasons to develop that property. So this was always an interest of housing developers. Let me just say that from the very beginning. Housing development was always something that real estate folks and developers always looked at, which would have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units up in that area. So it was always the intent of the city, all the way back to Mayor Perler and probably further back, to get infrastructure up there to bring in development. At the time, it was mostly industrial and high-tech, but that things change. Industry kind of wanted I guess for perception reasons, there wasn't the internet, you didn't have a website, you didn't have Facebook and all that. So perception-wise and image-wise, industry wanted to have a visible face. They wanted to be on Central Street or on Lancaster Street with a big sign out front. Not as important anymore. And so bringing the infrastructure was still important, though. And so getting the infrastructure up there, and that was just the sewer line. Go ahead. So not only did we get the sewer line up, and it served many capacities. Many of the septic systems along Ridgewood Drive in that area were failing. This is about the time that we started hearing about Title V. And a lot of these houses up in Ridgewood Drive in that area are very old. And some of the ones on Harvard Street are very old. Not old, I mean, they're not 1910. But, the systems were put in place, septic systems. So what just this sewer line meant was opening up Orchard Hill Park, is which we ended up calling it, right? But it also took 8 businesses. Now, I'm telling you, I was in direct contact with these business owners that were up there at Pioneer Park. Some of them were at their ends with, had actually said, we have to look for another place to go. We cannot stay here. It's becoming unaffordable to stay here anymore. And so it was pretty tense because we were saying, listen, it's going to happen. We're working hard. We're working as hard as we possibly can. The sewer line project's going to happen. Hang in there. And it got tense. I got to be honest with you. It got tense. People were running out of patience. And so what we ended up doing is we ended up getting 115 homes on or near Harvard Street, we ended up getting them sewer as the sewer line passed their properties. And that cost of that sewer line to them was free.
Correct.
Cost them nothing. Now, there might have been some ties in, and there was another, I think there were a couple other side streets that weren't directly connected to, we didn't go right by their house, but it did allow them for very few dollars to get off their septic system and run a line down the street, which was like a betterment. So they all chipped in X amount of dollars, and they could get that. They could get off their septic systems. Now, septic system could go anywhere from $30,000 to $45,000. Even at that time, we're talking $30,000. So it allowed us to hook in 8 of the existing businesses. So we ran that sewer line not only up through the Derby Farm, but we ran it into Pioneer Park, which, by the way, you had to go into Lunenburg to get to the Leominster Industrial Park. That's a fact. And then we ended up connecting. Now that gave us, bringing that sewer line in, allowed us to bring in 12 businesses at Orchard Park. Plus, this is the sewer line that feeds some of the new housing subdivision that is down near Orchard Hill Park. That subdivision, I don't even know if they could build that subdivision on septic because it's so close to the wetlands down there and the soil, the composition of the soil. So anyway, that brings us to this long story about how the heck did you get sewer all the way up there? Now, it doesn't just end there because you remember what happened after that is Lancaster needed sewer for the visitor center. It also needed sewer and water for those other businesses that were in Lancaster that didn't have it, and it was unaffordable for them to bring it in. So this project, while it was a major, major project, served many different, it was the 5-for-1 project. Not only did you get sewer to those businesses, you got to private homes, you got other homes that were off side streets, you got a developer that come in and built brand new homes right aside of Orchard Hill Park, and that sewer line, these things couldn't have happened. Go ahead to the next slide. All right, why don't you talk about this?
So at the same time, when development was coming in, we knew it was coming with the sewer line, and Route 13 was getting more and more congested. So a couple things happened. The state committed to...
Let's go back 1 second. Mayor Perla had come up with a plan to do like a bypass. Himself, I think Richie Gerard had come up with one. They were very tough for a number of different reasons, which I'll mention later. But one of the major issues in Leominster under several administrations, including Mayor Mahan, I believe all the way back to Mayor Perla and Gerard, could have been further. I don't recollect that part, but I do remember clearly that getting traffic off of Route 13 was another sort of major. Now, people that were, I forget the exact number, but we had that number of how many people were from southern New Hampshire or lived in Lunenburg or places like Pepperell and some of those other towns like Townsend and anyway, Brookline, New Hampshire. They didn't want to be on 13. They wanted to get on 13 further up. So a number of different proposals.
A flyover.
Yes.
Using the runway at the airport.
Yep.
All that.
Cut through North Leominster. Mayor Pearl had a plan to go through North Leominster, up around Joslyn Street, up in that area. Yep. And, okay, go ahead.
Congressman Oliver was involved.
Yeah, there were so many people. So now comes this ramp configuration.
So we're going to, there's development coming. So the state commits to the $1.3 million upgrade of the interchange there at the Leominster Lancaster line with a longer...
There weren't exits there.
Right. A longer deceleration lane, all that happens. Trucks couldn't make it around the corner there on Harvard Street. That didn't work.
Right.
Couldn't. So they committed to this and then...
modified it, yeah.
Yep. And then we got $1.75 million through the state for the new... I guess you can call it a bypass. It gets people off of Harvard Street, gets people off of 13.
So this is another major project. Now you say 1.7 million, that's probably 10 today. At our MassDOT meeting today, we're passing projects that were 3 to 4 million. you saw today, we passed in Bill Ricker a $20 million bike pack project. They estimate now that a bike pack project is between $4 and $5 million per mile. Now, we just did this last mile for what? Close to 2 million?
1.7
Yeah,
million.
so
Yep.
close to 2 million. You can see how the cost have gone up. So 1.7 million got us a road and we ended up connecting Pioneer Park, which again is the road that you had to come from North Leominster, you had to come through Lunenburg, had to come through North Leominster into Lunenburg to get to Pioneer Park, which meant all those tractor trailers had to go down Prospect Street or go into Lancaster that were coming from all of these businesses. And that's a lot of tractor trailers. I forget what it is per day. It was 40 to 50 tractor trailer loads per day. And that was just on the Leominster side, not including Lunenburg, that were traveling through Prospect Street that now no longer had to do that. Go ahead.
So this is, an example of what businesses were dealing with on Pioneer Drive. Munson Companies decided to, good things came out of it. They decided to expand. ESP Lock and Alpha Gary and some of the other businesses that were trucking away a huge amount of waste didn't have that expense anymore. At the time, any one of those businesses or all of them could have left without sewer. They would, they could have gone to Devon's at that
many
point.
places.
They could, and so that was 1,600 employees that at the time were at Pioneer Drive.
Who had to travel to Lunenburg to get to work.
Right.
To a Leominster Industrial Park.
So I wasn't working for the city then. I was working for the state on the other side of this fiasco to try and get this funding. So the city in '98, the city was able to pass a loan order to as part of this project, and then in '98 we also got a regional sewer grant in the state budget, which was vetoed. So we waited till '99, got it back in the budget, and that created the Leominster, Lancaster, Lunenburg sewer agreement, which took 6 years to agree to.
Right.
So Leominster would get 1.975 million, Lunenburg would get 300,000, and Lancaster would get 225 toward sewer efforts in their communities. At the same time, we were working on getting the $1 million for the P-Wed Road, the actual connector between Harvard Street and Pioneer Drive. The first phase began in '99 with the Mohawk Drive piece, which was about $550,000 to increase capacity to Pioneer Drive and the neighborhoods and the whole area. At the same time, the companies on the Lunenburg side of Pioneer Drive wanted to get in on this. So we were able to secure for them at the state level $450,000 to tie the Lunenburg companies in to the sewer. So that worked out. We got another community development grant for the pump station. We needed more money. The connector road turned out to need to be more of a project than we thought, so that brought it up to the 1.7 million that we talked about earlier. Then we took too long, and we couldn't agree on the 3L project, as we called it, and the state withdrew the money.
Right. And partly, and I remember being involved with this, and part of the problem was the towns didn't want us, we didn't want to provide sewer and then have them build things that competed with us. So we didn't want to see them build another mall. We didn't want them to build, things that we didn't agree with. We're like, listen, we're going to make money off your sewer and water, but it's not that much. So we're going to lose money on taxes if these businesses leave. All we want to be able to do is agree that. Now, there's a law in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that says you can do that. That says that the host community, remember, it's us paying for the treatment plant, it's us paying for all the new compliance issues, all the upgrades, it's us paying for all that. Well, some of the towns didn't like that and said, you can't tell us what to do with our sewer. And we said, well, it's not your sewer. It's our sewer, and it's kind of like an extension cord. It's my neighbor comes to me and says, hey, I'd like to put a spotlight up on the side of the house because, I don't know, for whatever reason. And I'd like to do that. Is that okay? Sure. Okay, here's an extension cord. And then I say, well, yeah, but I don't want you to run it 24/7. I want you to shut it off. So we couldn't agree, so they pulled the funds on it. But that would have been a huge, that would, in my estimation, would have provided us a better mechanism to compete with Devon's. But it didn't happen. So this would have brought sewer to Lancaster on the north side, south side. Didn't happen. Okay, we move on. And then 2004, the sewer deal's back on the table and approved by the state for $2 million. Right?
Yes, that's definitely the simplified version of
Yes.
it, though. There were meeting after meeting.
Oh, I remember. It was. And see, the reason I say this is because there are people out there that will take things and minutes to the meetings, and they'll try to recreate something based on that. And what I'm saying is, I'm in the middle of all this. I was, and Wendy, most of the time, we're like the people at all these meetings. We're the people filling out these grants. We're the people meeting with the businesses. We're like involved in the process, yet there are people out there trying to tell you a story who were no part of any of this. In fact, when the city set up the housing committee meeting, they weren't in any of the meetings, including the city councilors who now are opposed to the rezoning that was passed by the city council, who had the opportunity to come to the to come to meetings. So here we are. We're like, hey, wait a minute. It's almost like you took a train to Boston and you went down to Pizza Regina and had a pizza. You went back to the Boston Garden to see a concert. Then you get back on a train at 9 o'clock to come back to Leominster, and somebody says, no, that's not what happened. No, that's not what happened. I know the whole story. They took a bus and they went to Lexington, and they went down the street and they went to a French restaurant, and when they were through, they took a walk through the historic bridge at Concord and Lexington in Concord, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not what happened. You're telling me you're trying to tell people what I was involved in. You're trying to tell them that what I was involved in is not what happened. No, that's what I did last night. No, you didn't. That's not what you did last night. Yeah, I did. So this is why when we speak to this, we're explaining this because we're in the middle of all this. This is exactly what happened. And anyway, sure. So there was, I guess what Wendy's saying, there's a lot more to the story, but we just, we're giving the highlights.
So in 2005, 17 years after this started, we got residents, businesses, vacant land got sewer, the interchange was upgraded, the road was built to Pioneer Drive,
Right.
and the retail was partially developed.
We went from raw land that the city wanted to develop to actually getting the infrastructure that's necessary. And not only did this provide a mechanism and a safety valve for existing businesses, but it allowed us to bring new business and for businesses to expand. It also allowed for 115 homes on and off Harvard Street and 8 businesses to connect to sewer that they otherwise would have spent $20,000, $30,000, $35,000 building replacement systems, and that was a lot of money at the time. I remember when Title V came, we were running sort of as many neighborhoods as we possibly could. We ran it up Grant Street. That was the first one. We ran it up off of Pleasant Street. We ran a number of streets up in that area, and all of those homes at some point would have needed to replace. In fact, I remember a couple of houses did. They couldn't wait, and they ended up having to replace their septic systems, and I remember it costing between $25,000 and $30,000 to get that septic system in, again, because they couldn't wait. And so this, as I said, was a huge bonus to the city and that section, of the city.
When we first got the first piece of money, the first chunk of money, the Telegram and Gazette in 1998 said...
Is that a slide?
Yeah, it's way back, though.
Okay.
I
Said
can-
what? Go ahead.
Said that there it is. The development project that has been a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
That's very accurate.
Yeah, no, it is. Had we not had the right team working on this, it never would have happened. we didn't go out and hire like major engineering companies or anything at the time to keep this thing moving. We met face to face with everyone. We went to Boston, to the governor's office. We met with everybody. We just were tenacious about this, and showed the that this wasn't a build it and they're going to come. This is and so now as this materializes, let's go to the next piece, because I assume we're going to get into the zoning part of this thing now. Because there you go. Look at it. I read the mind of the thing. So what happens is, and what's happening at this particular time is that there was a parochial way of thinking here in Leominster in terms of industrial property. I remember if something was owned industrial, you weren't doing anything with it unless it was industrial. So let's just say there was a small restaurant, a pizza place, or a takeout restaurant, and there are hundreds of people working in a particular area, Jungle Road, or it even predates that. What's the one? Jai-Tech Park. You couldn't build anything in Jai-Tech Park. In fact, there was a clothing store, I don't know if you knew this, in Jai-Tech Park. There were revisions made so that they could display indoors a showroom. So in other words, Rob outside opens a clothing business, and he's actually going to make this clothing. And his clients want to come in and see what this clothing. You can't come in and buy it. So they were very strict with the rules, very, very strict with industrial rules. That was the engine for the city. At this particular time, things are changing, and more what's happening around the country long before this. But what's happening around New England is we're getting more mixed-use property. So if you look at a Cummings property in Woburn or Beverly, or in other locations that they're in, they might have a small manufacturer. Right aside of them might be somebody with a CNC machine. Across from them in the same complex might be a coffee place, a Dunkin' or a Starbucks. Next door would be a dentist. Next door, totally mixed use, high tech, CNC machines today, and even life science. That was the trend. That's what was beginning to reshape zoning. If you went up to Salem, New Hampshire, they had built a Target, a bunch of a ton of commercial property, and then built apartments, garden style condominiums. And the idea was you take a golf cart and you drive through a path, and you can go to Target, or you can go to a restaurant, or whatever it was. That's how things were reshaping themselves. And a lot of conversation was started where we need to do more mixed use. We can't just have everything zoned for industrial. And I'll tell you how foolish the zoning in Leominster was. Just to sidetrack for a minute, on Pleasant Street, there were a couple of old mill buildings there. And in the old mill buildings, across from Lane's Market, you could do dance. They had changed the zoning because they were older industrial buildings, and it was unlikely that somebody was going to come back and use them for manufacturing. So there were slight modifications that made into it so you could use it for, say, a dance studio. And it even got so absurd that somebody wanted to do, say, yoga, and they couldn't do it because it wasn't dance. Or they wanted to do country line dancing, but they couldn't do it. These are all things that are like part of physical fitness. There were so many different, you could call them fads at the time. Olivia Newton-John sort of fad style kind of things that, were in and out, were fashionable and stuff. Well, they weren't allowed in those zones. You couldn't convert those to housing. So those buildings literally sat there for, I don't even know how long, 20 years before the zoning was changed. That's how absurd the zoning was. Absurd later on, but it certainly made sense in its day that they had to reserve every single inch of industrial space because that was the economic engine for Leominster. Is it still? Yes. Manufacturing is still alive. In fact, we produce more product, manufacturing plastics, furniture, than the whole entire city did in its heyday. But it's robotic, it's automation, it's CNC, it's 3D design, it's a lot of using technology. So now we get into the zoning where we have to have this conversation that says, hey, we can't just leave this property and extend out Pioneer Drive. Yeah, we may do okay and get some manufacturing, but it's less likely. So take us through this zoning part, Wendy.
So in 2001, it was zoned industrial, in which came with everything that you just talked about,
Right.
the limitations.
Now remember, this took years of convincing.
Right.
In other words, conversation like, hey, nothing's going to happen up here. We're missing out on opportunities. Go ahead.
So they amended it to include a mixed-use development within an industrial zone. Still had the safeguards in there for site plan approval from the planning board for sites over 20 acres, special permit required for 20 plus acres when more than a third of land is retail. That happened. And then in 2013, we did the huge overhaul of the citywide zoning, and MU2 was created, which is what it basically is today,
Right.
which
So the
truly,
mixed use, so we converted it in 2003, which was a big step, to allow mixed use on 20 acres of the property there. And plus or minus, but it's a third of the land devoted to retail and 2/3 vote required by the city council. So 2/3 of the city council need a vote for it. Then in 2013, we do, this is the time when we take a look at all our zoning. We say, look, you can do, you can have, the zoning is outdated. There are new businesses that aren't allowed downtown in the city. I think this is when we took on the issue of downtown zoning overlay.
well, that was a huge success.
Merriam
Creating the
Ave,
Village District
Yeah.
and the
If you look at Merriam Ave, you'll see lawyers and
Yeah.
professional accountants, finance people. I bet you there's another 25, 30 businesses that took advantage
Yeah.
of that, but we had to change the zoning because you
Right.
literally couldn't go on Merriam Ave past Church Street to put an office, which was totally silly, especially since we moved the courthouse.
Yeah.
So anyway, now we come in 2013 and they actually create this new thing called mixed use 2 zoning, right? This is a modification of the original mixed use development, correct?
right.
And it requires 2/3 of the city council. Now, a lot of work went into this. It was a lot of educating the council on how the trends have changed, how these mixed use develop, where they are, how they work, what is the benefit of it. It just didn't say, oh, here's mixed use development, this is how it happens. It took a lot of education and exposing them to specific projects around the state and also New England, that this is the trend. And if we're really going to get, the city needs tax dollars. If we're going to get the tax dollars to run the schools and provide city services, we need growth. And if you remember at the time, very clearly we started a growth management plan because too many homes were being built in Leominster. We saw, 500 permits. It was not uncommon in 1 year in the city of Leominster. In the 80s and late 70s and then the 80s, it was not uncommon. So we jumped into this growth management plan where we looked at putting together a plan for purchasing open space and controlling the development of the city so we were not overwhelmed by development in the city. Had we continued in this path, there would be thousands and thousands of new units. But we stopped that by purchasing all of this open space. We own open space all the way from the Sterling Line, Shoalin. Now, these aren't little paths. These are tracts of land all the way to the Leominster State Forest. That's a 6-7 mile long swath of open space.
Well, at the same time, we were one of the first communities to do our open space plan,
We were the first
which
community, I think.
was
The catalyst for getting open space
correct.
money. And then everybody caught on, why is Leominster getting all this money? And they're like, well, you didn't complete your open space plan. Well, we had a state-approved open space plan. So this is all going on at the same time. This isn't like we're trying to develop the whole city. We're trying to to do it in a responsible fashion. And so anyway, it controls the growth in the city. We didn't say no growth. We said controlled growth. And so as an example, for the last 5 years, on average, 10 new houses have been built in Leominster. On average, I think the Brooks Pond is probably the only large development that has been built, but that's been over 10 years. Right. Pete Bolio was city councilor, Ginny Tossi was that's a long time ago. And if you remember, that was specifically supposed to be 55 and older. That's the only reason it was let through. And but that's the last substantial housing development. We had, we've had some off of Exchange Street. We've had some other developments, but nothing to the extent that we saw in the 70s and 80s, which would have taken every available piece of property in the city, and probably because they were so ripe for development. They were so ripe. Shoreland Farms was close to 200 units up there?
Yep.
Beautiful pieces of land up there. Had infrastructure just down the street. It could take septic systems if needed. So anyway.
And at one point, it didn't really matter if it was in the watershed, because a lot of the watershed wasn't protected.
Correct. They didn't come out with the watershed plan until later. So now we jump to 2025. Let's look at 2013, what the provisions were. Provide for coordinated and mixed-use development of institutional multifamily. So as far back as 2013, it allowed mixed-use multifamily residence, business, and industrial uses. The special permit and the site plan approval from the planning board depended on the project size, correct?
Over or under 20, yeah, that's right.
Over or under 20 acres, decided that. So now, things are getting tough. It is getting expensive to build in Massachusetts. It's expensive to live. People are leaving the state. Leominster in particular becomes the conduit for demand for low-income housing, elderly housing, market rate housing, and high-end housing. It is one of the few areas in the Commonwealth that is under such pressure to accommodate all of these needs, not as people would say, oh, these are all outsiders. These are to meet the changing demands of our community. And you have 1,000 people working at a place like AIS. Now, in that employment base, and this is the case with most employees, whether it's Health Alliance, Reliant, all of the new medical offices that have set up here in Leominster. It is incredible how many new ones and how many, and thank goodness we didn't just build office space, because we know what we know what the status of office space around the country, the state, and certainly here in New England is not in need. NON, right? Not in need, not in demand. And so those are the pressures. That's just from existing employees, people that used to live here that want to move back here. That doesn't count the people who no longer have to spend 5 days at work in Boston or Cambridge, who now go in twice and said, geez, housing costs are the most affordable city to live in or town west of Boston is Leominster. Let's face it, right? So that's yet another demand. So that takes us to, okay, things are changing again, and they're changing quickly. The state is saying there's over 200,000 units of housing that is needed, or people are going to continue to leave the state. And oh, by the way, Mayor Mazzarella has been saying for years, we've got to make it more affordable, and you can't just say the words affordable and housing in one sentence in this state. You've really got to try to make it affordable. So you don't see much affordable because it is not affordable to build affordable housing. And that's a whole nother segment in a new report just came out, which I can take on, on a whole nother segment of this, because it's pretty interesting. Anyway, so that takes us to now. So things are changing. The state is saying, even the governor is saying, there are too many roadblocks to building housing, and one is the affordability part. And the governor says, and her housing team says, we need to look at modular. We need to look at accessory dwelling units. We need to look at taking some of the regulations out of the way that are stopping builders from building housing. And with that comes a statewide effort where the MBTA, the state is saying, hey, if you're an MBTA community or in a butter, Sterling just went through this, even though the train doesn't go through there, you have to come up with this housing plan. And we do that. We work on that. And simultaneously, groups around the state are putting housing committees together and inviting everybody in and saying, hey, listen, this is an issue. If Leominster, let's get parochial about our city, if we're going to continue to be a good community and provide housing to the very people who want to live here, who are in many cases working here, or a spouse might be. We've got to come up with something here. So we get this housing committee together, and we invite everybody in, anybody that wants to come in. I recommend 2 city councilors to come in to the committee. It goes to the city council. Do we have that clip?
Yeah.
We do?
Yep.
Can we show that clip?
It's video number 3.
Video number 3. Perfect. September 25th, 2023.
She's looking for 2 councilors to serve on a housing committee. I'm just going to very quickly describe. The housing committee has been formed because the mayor requested my department to address the housing crisis we are experiencing here in Leominster and statewide. We are looking for solutions as to how to provide more housing options to all types of buyers, market rate, first-time home buyers, senior housing, affordable, etc. I'm attaching the agenda from the first meeting and the meeting minutes so you can get an idea of what was discussed at the first meeting. The next step is to examine our zoning ordinances and determine what changes can be made to facilitate the development of more housing. The next meeting is Thursday, September 28th at 10 a.m. at the Leominster Public Library. Thank you for finding us some members for the council to serve.
All right. So I think it's very clear. The council president, Cormier, reads verbatim what we're trying to communicate, that we have we want to tackle this housing issue, and reads what the kind of what the objective is of this committee. Here's a copy of the minutes so you get an idea of what the kinds of things that we're speaking to. And, oh, by the way, there are 2 councilors. You can show the rest of the video now.
They are an integral part of this. So I don't know if anybody has any interest. Councilor Frida?
I spoke to John Souza, see how time consuming it would be. So I understood he was chairing it, or so I did agree to serve.
Okay. All right. And if there anyone else that wants to serve, you can send an email to me and CC the city clerk if you would. I know that the meetings are generally going to be, I think, on a Thursday at 10 a.m. So, you know, your schedule would have to allot for that. There is going to be a meeting this coming Thursday. So if anybody wants to go, they can reserve it and, you know, let me know. They're looking for 2 members. So I don't see anybody pounding my door down. So if anybody wants to think about this and let me know as soon as possible, that'd be great.
Do we have the agenda or the minutes of the last meeting? Because I don't have it. I don't think.
I have them somewhere here.
That's the end of that clip. So I think it's very clear. We asked for 2 members of the city council, and we're and I think we explained this is the scope of what we're trying to do. The meetings are at 10, but we were willing to move them around to accommodate anybody, really. I mean, that's what we said at one of our first meetings is, yeah, we'll do them at 10 if that's good for this, but if we have to move them to Saturdays or we got to move them to nighttime or whatever it is to accommodate others, then we gladly will. And in full disclosure, Councilor Robbins did ask that he receive the minutes. He didn't ask to be on the committee, he asked to get the minutes of the meeting. So I think that part's very clear, that before any changes are made, the invite was there, the scope of what we were trying to accomplish was there, and this is an open process. It didn't say, hey, if you're a developer, you can't come. If you're looking for elderly housing, you shouldn't come. It didn't say that at all. It just, we opened it up for everybody to come in. And it's like any planning charrette, if you've been to any of those things, like putting a wish list together. Everyone comes in and you put these, sort of boards around and everybody comes in and and we add to it, and okay, let's add this, let's add that, until you get go ahead, take it from there, until we get a set of recommendations, correct?
Yep.
Okay, where
Yep.
are we in this slide process? Yeah, it might have gotten us off.
No, so we're on the, where they just, in January, where they made the change.
Okay, so now comes the point where the Housing Committee takes all of these things, anything that was brought up, and again, minutes of a meeting basically reflect what's going on, It's not verbatim, and now we've got people saying, I've got minutes, and the minutes say this, and see this word in this sentence? No, we were there. We know exactly what was going on. We know exactly what was going on. We're in the middle of all this. So now we get to January of 2025, correct? And the recommendations are made to the planning board and
Yes.
the city council.
Yes.
These are, I emphasize, recommendations from the housing committee. That's what it is. These are recommendations from the housing committee on what we heard in and from the community, right? So it didn't mean that you didn't. So for instance, I bumped into a doctor and I bumped into a number of professionals while I'm at a hospital. And they're like, geez, we'd love to live in your, basically the emphasis was, basically the message was, we would love, we're really trying, we love it here, we really want to, bring our kids here. I'm living out of town right now, but we really like to move here. I'm working here, we really like it. I can't find a place to live. Or a new eye doctor, or bumped into a new dentist, and she said, we're having a hard time finding, a sort of high-end condominium for us to live in. That's kind of, the pool and community room, and set the thermostat, and if you have to leave to travel wherever, you just do that, and you pay your rent, and it's done. No taxes, nothing. No fees, nothing. This is it. And so all of that we took, and all of that went to the city council. And some, and let me preface this by saying, some change, so I think that what was attempted was that the council didn't know what they were passing. Well, if they didn't know what they were passing, they made actual changes. They actually made some changes and eliminated things from those recommendations. So let's look at this clip. This is a clip what? What's this one?
Thank you for coming down, Ms. Wood, and explaining all of this. So my question is, how many buildable acres? How many total acres are there? How many are built on currently? What the percentage of retail commercial is existing, and then how many buildable acres are there left? And now, in terms of MU2 districts, this is the one up near the Target or Orchard Hills complex. Are there any other MU2 zones? It's just this one? Okay. So this is just a question. So when we established MU2, which is a few years ago, the point was this was industrial land up there. And the move to MU2 was to provide some flexibility so that there was still opportunity for industrial building, commercial building, and residential building, which included multifamily building. So what is this change? The point was to have a mix of things up there. So I understand the need for housing. I understand that completely. What is this change? Why are we eliminating?
We're not eliminating that. If someone wanted to come forward with the commercial, they still could.
Right, but then I'm not sure.
just
Then
an
help me
example.
understand what's the objective of this then. If people can still build a combination of residential along with commercial or industrial and whatever in that zone, why are we making this change, or why is it being proposed? I've looked at the changes, I've looked at the proposed language changes, I'm like, okay, so I'm scratching my head thinking, what's this about? What's it really about?
Well, you've done a big thing in the use chart, changing the no to a yes. And then you've increased the build out
We've changed what from no to yes? The access?
from replacing entry from apartments and multifamily dwelling units.
Right.
That wasn't allowed before, now it's allowed. That enables that.
Well, there was some access to multifamily and residential units. What was it, and why are we changing it to yes now? Why was it no? I don't know where it's no.
I can open it, I have the zoning book right here.
Yeah, I do too. So if you want to refer me to the page, that would be helpful.
Okay, it's gonna be under the table of uses.
MU2 is on page 49.
Yes, but the table of uses on 31.
Okay.
I have that pulled open. So if you're under residential uses, MU1 for housing, if you look under the housing column, under I'm sorry, I misspoke, MU2. It says no for two-family dwellings. It says no for apartments and multifamily. Let's see. It says no for apartments or multifamily dwellings. That changes to a yes. So where it wasn't allowed, it's.
No. It's a special
Oh,
permit planning.
Oh, sorry.
Special permit planning board, right.
I'm sorry, I'm talking and looking at the same time and not
That's
looking.
okay.
Yes, that wouldn't require that special permit anymore. It's gonna be a yes. But site plan approval is still triggered if it's over 4 units.
Why do we want to eliminate the special permit by the planning board? For
That's
apartment
just
and multi?
another barrier for the developer. It's this, we're trying to encourage housing, so we're trying to make it easier.
Okay.
And it still would go through site plan when that's triggered. If it's just 2 units or 1 unit, it wouldn't trigger site plan, but if it's over 4 units, it would trigger it.
Right, so is the proposal also to change the no for detached, single-family dwelling, two-family dwelling, mobile home or trailer park? I mean, is the plan to change
No,
all
we're
of
not
those?
doing mobile home or
those?
trailer park.
Okay.
We're
but
not,
Single-family dwelling, detached, single-family dwelling and two-family dwelling?
well, the way it was proposed in the petition was just for apartments and multifamily dwelling change.
Just that one line?
Just that one line.
Okay. So it's going from a special permit by the planning board to yes. So you're going to eliminate the need for a special
No
permit?
special permit.
No
needed.
special permit.
So butters would not be notified, it would be just yeah, I would take that out.
Okay, that's good to know.
Special
All right, there you go. It's confusing because the planning director is showing up, and I think under the assumption that this is the actual council meeting that they voted on. And I think she's under the impression they've already gone through this material, that they're already up to date as to what's going on in this material and what the changes are. And there weren't that many changes. And so the question is asked by the councilor, what is changing? And it is And she says several times, it's still going to require site plan approval. Still going to need site plan approval. What's changing? Before you needed, in a special permit process, correct? You needed to notify the abutters. And she's saying, this changes it, you don't have to. That's what she's saying.
And it's very clear.
It's very clear. So whether you agree with it or not, this is a recommendation. So one of the things that people heard was, well, you know what? These are some of the barriers. What are some of the barriers? And some of the developers said, well, let me tell you, you could spend years fighting over these projects. And nothing takes away from the council in that ward, or any city council, or anybody notifying the neighbors. Nothing, all it says is that you don't have to notify abutters. You don't have to. It doesn't mean site plan approval, they're going to know site plan approval, they're going to know about that. So the question was asked, and it was answered, and the councilor's effort repeats it again and says, so this is what the change is. Now, there are other changes, like no mandatory, there's not a mandatory retail component to the apartments. At one point, it was recommended that we put that we put retail below the apartments. That was taken out. What else was taken out of there, Wendy? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
There were some other things that were taken out. So there goes the notion that people didn't understand what they were voting on, because it required 2/3 vote of the city council to get it in. So now what's happening is, so again, whether you're for or against it, the issue here is somehow the council was, people in opposition, or some of them, and again, full disclosure, anybody that's against anything has a full right to be against anything and attend all the meetings and do it. That's not the issue. The issue here is they didn't know what they were voting on. They were hoodwinked. They were tricked into voting what they were voting on. It's very clear they knew what they were voting on. The question was asked, a little confusing at the beginning, and then the question was asked, so this is going to go from you have to notify to you're not required to notify. That didn't say that the councilors in that ward or that councilors couldn't send out a notice to everyone. When the developer of the horse track, the fairgrounds, came in, he wanted a meeting with the abutters, with the people that are about the project. Well, the city council took it upon themselves to notify not just the abutters, even though the invitation was going to go to the abutters. Everybody got notified. Everybody. This thing was being emailed, and again, this was supposed to be a private meeting as a courtesy to the neighbors to say, hey, listen, just so you know, we don't have all the details. The mayor said, meet with the neighbors. That's the way we'd like to handle this. Meet with the neighbors. And that just went everywhere. The first meeting must have had 200 people in it down at Francis Drake School. So there is nothing in the ordinance or zoning that precluded anybody from, any city councilor from notifying anybody for anything. But these are some of the things. In fact, what's happening right now is the governor actually proposed eliminating some of the MEPA reviews.
Yep.
That's not anything. Now, that's the other thing that is that people in opposition, some of the people in opposition are now trying to say that we're pushing this effort to eliminate this. No. Total misinformation. This is coming from the state. The state is saying these are all the roadblocks that are tying up projects from being developed. Now, nobody's talking about not going to the planning board or to the conservation commission. Nobody's talking about the fact that if somebody doesn't like a project, they want to appeal it to whoever, whatever they put, to the courts or whatever, that they can't do that. Nobody's saying that at all. We're just coming to you with a special edition of Inside Leominster, talking about this project at Orchard Hills, where Target is and the rest of the project, which is a mixed-use project. Now, let me just explain another thing before we get into the grants. You could build manufacturing on that property. Mm-hmm. You could build a warehouse. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. I don't have my zoning book with me today, but I think that's a whole nother area that we can put out. We'll publish it on Facebook. We'll give you a list of everything that can go on there. So multifamily can go on there, but what else can go on there, right? So we could also give you a list of that. Okay, now let's talk about So this is another situation where somebody's telling us what we did, but they weren't part of the process, they weren't at meetings, they weren't part of our conversation. But they're gonna tell us, hey, this is the real story. They're gonna make a story, but we were in the middle of it saying, no, that's not what happened at all. Go ahead, Wendy.
So, this is, to me, because I'm the grant administrator, obviously, this is the worst part to me, because it's
Right.
personal to me.
Right, they made it personal.
Yeah.
They went after you
Yeah.
personally.
Correct.
But you're in the middle. You wrote the grant.
I wrote the
But now
grant.
they're telling you that's not what you did.
Correct.
You wrote the grant, but that's not what your intentions were.
Correct.
You had other intentions. Go ahead.
Just trying to survive every day writing grants.
Yeah, right.
So, claimed by Councilor Zephyr and others, Mass Work grant was misused since the proposed industrial building was replaced by housing. So,
Is that true?
no, but
They keep
first-
saying it.
I know.
They keep
but
saying it.
This is as basic
Yeah,
gets.
this is like
This is
a third grader could understand that the parcel that the housing is going on is not the project that the grant was for. It's like really book page, map, simple stuff. Go ahead.
So first of all, just to explain, the MassWorks grant is not a grant where you get the infrastructure and the next day there's a building there.
Right.
The purpose
Never.
of it is
Right.
to get the infrastructure and
Put
then
it in
promote.
place, get it
the-
shovel ready.
Right.
So the other misconception is that some of the people on the against the project have said, well, they put all this infrastructure in and they said there was going to be a building, there's no building. Well, yes, that's, at
So-
the time, that's what was being proposed, that was what was in the pipeline. But it's a 200,000 square foot building, it could be two 100s, it could be this thing could be chopped up in a bunch of different ways, but for the purpose of the grant, you put in what's sort of current. And at the time, we had, before prices really went through the roof, we had industrial tenants looking at spaces like this. Go ahead.
Yeah. So examples like Southgate, years to
Yes,
build
where
out
the registry
Southgate.
is.
That's the same.
Right, took
that's
years.
The same
Still
grant.
a couple of lots down
Yep.
there.
Yep.
That didn't mean that when we put in for the grant, that as soon as the grant was done, there were going to be buildings on
Correct.
it within the next 20. It never says in the grant that within 10 months or 12 months,
Right.
you're going to see buildings there.
Right.
Never says that.
Down-
You wrote the grant.
The downtown.
Does it say that?
No.
No.
The downtown grant that we got in like 2018, there's still a piece of that we're going to build out.
Right.
I mean, it was Enterprise Bank. We put
Right.
Brady's, that
Yeah.
that building, the Summer Street housing. All of that was a component. All of that is built, but there's still one component left on that, and
Right.
it'll come
There's
in
no
time.
MassWorks
It is-
grant that I know of that it's, you get the grant and then, the building gets built and it's in, as soon as you're done with the grant or, 12 months later. So that is never in the intentions of the grant. That was never, anytime we've put in, it was always understood. It could be, one big building, could be 5 smaller buildings, but the intent was for industrial purposes.
Yep. So here's the grant. This is the map they like to wave around. This is where the arrow's pointing is the 234,000 square foot building that actually is the match to the application. The black line you see there is the grant scope area, if you want to put it that way. This is
All right,
it
there you go.
in yellow.
So what they're trying to tell you is, see this outline? Let me take a step back. That's what we put in for the grant. See that little building to the left or
Right.
on to the left over there? That's no part of this grant. It has nothing to do with this grant. Now, is there other property up there that could be developed later on? Yeah. I mean, you see where the road goes into a cul-de-sac? Is there other property in that area? Right. Yes, there's other land. The specifics of this grant, and you hear it right from the grant writer, was this building. This is what we put in for. It has nothing to do with housing. Did you ever put in a grant? Was any of this ever discussed with you? Did the word housing ever even enter the conversation?
Once in the grant application, it says, "Is this pertaining to housing?" And we checked no.
No. There you go. So this is a clear as could be example of somebody trying to tell us what we did. Like, no, we wrote the grant. We put in for the grant. We sat through these meetings. We knew exactly what we're doing. Now they're trying to tell us, you don't own a blue car, you own a purple car. Or a yellow. No, my car's My car's blue, I know it is. It says it right on there. No, no, no. No, that's not the case at all. This is what you're looking at the two people who are keenly involved in this project telling you they weren't involved in this project. We were. And we're telling you, this is what we put in for.
So I'm going to go through these really quick because this is just the same thing. But there's 4 separate sections of this grant that explain just that it's one 234,000 square foot building. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 times. This is the commitment page for the private one. It says the same thing, 1 234,000 square foot building. This is the developer's commitment letter, which says the exact same thing. So
yeah,
that's
nothing changed. Yeah, and I'm saying to myself, did I miss something? We're going through the grant stuff. I'm like, we never even talked about housing. Never came up. Ever once did housing come up. Ever. And then all of a sudden, there are people trying to tell me, and you, and I'm like, wait a minute, did I miss something? I'm going, no, this is a housing no, this is not the location of the housing development. There are not 1,000 houses that are planned for this property. There are not 1,500. They're not 2,000. That's not what the project is. So again, are we at the end here?
Oh, no. It's worse, right?
Okay.
It gets
It's
worse.
worse.
Gets
Okay.
worse. Then we have a city councilor who tells the newspaper, after being told that this is not
a number
the
of
case.
times.
Yes.
After being told, we sent emails after emails and conversations. No, council, this is not. So something's clearly either intentional or wrong here. I don't know which one is it. All right?
So here's the email. Basically, we asked her, show us the map. Show us the map where the...
This is after she talked to the newspapers.
Yes.
Yeah. So
So-
you're referring to this map. What map are you talking about?
So where is it that the grant project matched? The industrial building was replaced by housing. We couldn't get it.
It can't find it.
No, we can't get it.
Her
This
response
is
is what?
basically that she doesn't have that.
Doesn't have a map. So she tells the Globe and she tells the Sentinel.
And she tells the Globe.
She tells the Globe.
In November, we're
In
still
November
doing
now.
this.
Now we're all the way into November. She's still repeating the same message. So this to me is, I guess, if you keep saying your car is yellow when it's really blue, if you keep saying it enough times, somebody, I guess, will believe it. So this is why I said time and time again on our morning briefings, somebody has to ask the council, and we're going to get that opportunity. We are definitely, if I have to call a special meeting, we're going to get the opportunity to say, look, on these dates, you said this. We asked you, what map are you referring to? You said no map, and you're still in November repeating that the same thing, that the grant was put in and for industrial, and now it's being used for housing. I don't know how many times we could say this. So we are going to get that opportunity. The residents and the taxpayers and the citizens of the city have a right to ask, just like they can request a department head to come to a meeting, just like they can request the mayor to come to a meeting, just like they can do it. We have the right to ask them questions so that they can listen. So we have a chance, and especially when you're accusing city employees, they have a right to be heard. And so the question's going to get asked, where is this? Where do you see this? Here are the people involved in the process. They're telling you this never came up. So where did you manufacture this? No pun intended. No, actually, there's a pun they intended. Where did you come up with this information? And after you were corrected on it many times, why did you keep saying that?
This is the letter I sent to the planning board and the council.
10/20/25.
And she still went to the Globe.
First and most important, I'd like to address the accusation that grant funds were misused. She said she tells the Globe in November, the next month, that they were misused. And Wendy carefully explains it. The funds were not misused. I don't know how many times we can go over this and over and over and over and say, this isn't even the same parcel. But see how they tricked you into showing you that this is the same parcel. And oh, no, it's that little building on the left. No, that building on the left is nothing to do with this. Well, could another building be built over there? Yes, but that's not what we put the grant in for. And the state knows that. Go ahead. No transparency in the zoning process. I don't understand. We had how many meetings? This is the process.
Well,
right?
so
These are
we
council
don't have to
meetings.
go over this.
These are
The
council
ending
meetings.
is that there were 9 opportunities at planning board and city council meetings to speak for or against this project.
Right. There you go. 9 opportunities.
And
For the council is to notify everybody in the mixed-use development if they wanted. If they wanted. Councilor Zephyr is council at large. She could have easily notified everybody. Just like when I was attempting to build a project on Mechanic Street, she made sure all of French Hill, when I was trying to get a sign off my property that was put there without our permission, without insurance, put in the wrong place, instead of city property, she made sure all of French Hill knew about that, right? Yep. All these things that she made sure, and yet 9 opportunities for her to notify all of the people in mixed use 2, MU2, an opportunity to come in and speak for or against the project, and she never did it. But now, see, this is diversion. It's I should have done this, I didn't do it. Now I've got to divert everybody's attention, and I've got to be the hero in this project, and now I've got to divert everybody's attention away and say, oh, look what was done. This was done illegally. We were tricked into this, even though in her own words, she not only asks the question and gets clarification on it, but then she explains it to the rest of the council. So yes, all right, so 9 opportunities to speak for or against this project.
And we're now at 37 years
Yes,
working on this
37
land.
okay.
So, as an aside, the open space, I mean, we talked about this earlier, these are all our open space plans since 1997. Not once has it come up that, I've been involved in every single one of these plans.
Yep.
And pieces of property come up, people make suggestions, not once did this property come up as something that we
So
should
anybody could have
preserve.
come up?
Yep.
City council, as anybody could
There
have
were
said, you know
big,
what?
huge meetings at City Hall.
I think this property is very close to the abutters or whatever, and therefore, and again, I'm all for proper buffering so that the neighbors don't have to see this project. I would much rather have, instead of tractor trailers going in and out in like a distribution center or something, I'd much rather see a good quality project being put in. In fact, in most of the minutes, you'll see, and any time that I'm at any of these meetings, I talk about what are these projects going to look like in 20 years? What's the quality of these projects? I'm less worried about things that are superficial than I am the sustainability of these projects. And that goes for Chick-fil-A, that goes for Starbucks, that goes for little projects, big projects. If a problem arises, what you've heard me say many times, Chick-fil-A, if you end up with a parking problem up there and, you end up with, you're so successful, that's your problem to fix. You could tell us all you want right here. What I care about is your ability to correct the problem if there's a problem, right? The sustainability, building a good, solid project. Not, let's build a project, shut the pool 5 years from now, shut the community center. No, that's not what I'm looking for, right? Good, quality projects. Go ahead.
So we get a Freedom of Information Act request.
How many total documents have we provided the Orchard Hill people in opposition?
This one was 140 documents.
140 documents.
the
That's not
planning-
pages, that's documents.
Documents.
Yes.
And then the planning board answered over 100 requests for information.
That's 240. That's 100 requests for information. That doesn't
Right,
count
so
all the
that's-
other ones we answered.
Right.
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 So we're talking hundreds.
Yes. Yes.
And all provided.
Yes, correct. And the problem, it took a long time to do it, and we're happy to do it. It's public information.
But you
It
got to dig
should-
through this, make
Yeah,
copies of it.
but that's fine,
Right.
and that's
Takes
fine.
time.
But
All the time
we
you're
did
putting
provide
grants-
it.
All this time you're putting grants together
Uh-huh.
and all that. Sure.
And we did provide it, and then we were told, it was stated at the council meeting that we did not.
Right.
So that's
But you did
where,
provide.
yes, we did.
And the council, I think the clerk at the council, the city clerk notified or sent it out, or I don't know where.
Yeah.
But anyway, it got into all right, so it was all sent out. So
Yep.
there was nobody hiding information. When they talk about transparency, my unfavorite word of transparency, because it's just so overused about everything, that in this particular situations, the phones rang constantly. People stopped in the city hall, went down to the planning board. Everything stopped. Everybody stopped everything we're doing if they could get the information. That doesn't even count the Conservation Commission, the city clerk's office. It was every day. Every day nonstop. Every day nonstop. Go ahead. And
So-
what did we do? We gave them all the information.
Yep. Yep.
Did anybody ever ask you this question? All these people that were asking information, did they ever ask you, A, were you involved in the grant process?
I have not spoken to any.
Did they ever ask you, yes or no? I'm the judge here. I want answers here. Okay. Did they ever ask you that?
No.
Okay. Did they ever ask you if the intention of this project was for industrial?
They haven't asked me any-
The grant.
Oh, the
Did
grant.
they? Did they ask you if you had a component in here for housing? Did they ever ask you
Yeah.
that? The people are objected to it. And you told them no.
Right.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, any question that was asked, did the city council ever have you downstairs and ask
No.
you questions about the grant?
No. They invited everybody but me.
Yeah, right. Well, clearly, not all, but some are in a predicament where they're going to go on we were tricked and this is the wrong piece of property. Oh, this is the property that you put in for industrial, but housing. The housing is not on this property. Okay, go ahead.
So the last thing is we all you talked about really is that the council didn't know what they were voting on,
Yes.
which that was really.
And
I
they
mean, it
took
was pretty
things out
clear.
of it too. They eliminated
Correct,
some things
correct,
from it. Right.
Correct. So the bottom line is here that they're now saying that first of all this took a long time.
Yep.
This took 37 years to get to this point.
And
where
also
we-
this zoning change from the time the housing committee started. We're talking years from when the
Right.
housing committee started to when it got to the city council.
2 years.
2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
2
This
years.
didn't happen in a
2
vacuum.
years.
Like in the night of darkness, somebody slid something in here that tricked everybody into this. No.
Right. Now
I-
they want investigations. They want all this
Right.
stuff. But
My opinion is the city council understood it. I think the city council knew exactly what we're trying to do. And then when the public, when it turned this way, in an election year, I think, I think they got concerned. And there were opponents to people put up specifically for this, and this was going to turn political, and that doesn't get away from the fact that plenty of opportunity was there for anybody to be on the housing committee, to take part of the housing committee, share your thoughts. That all the time that we spent on open space plans. This property, if somebody thought it was worthy of preservation, could have been on it. So this is a long, just like this presentation is a very long one. It is because there's a whole history here. There's a whole history of which we're part of, and there are people trying to tell you that we misrepresented, that we should be calling all of these ethics commissions, and these people should be charged, and we should be called the Inspector General, the Attorney General, and we're the only people that have been directly involved in this process. Directly. 9
And
meetings.
if you didn't live here, right? If you
Yeah.
just moved here
You'd think
5
we're a
years
bunch of
ago,
criminals down here.
you didn't know, but you wouldn't know the story of how the sewer line got
Right.
all. There
No.
was nothing.
And you know what? Now this is on here. This is historical. This is here forever. People, if want to find out, they go into the archives. They'll be able to find out, hey, what is the history behind Derby Farm? And when it left its presence as a farm and could have been a digital project when digital was booming. And there are a lot of stories, a lot of side stories that go along with that, which I don't have time, and those are just, fiction, or I don't know if those stories are true or not. But I do know this is what's true, because we were personally involved in this, and there were a group out there trying to tell you, right, at Thanksgiving, and that's why I put those things out there, like when they tell you to pass they start telling you we're going to put 2,000 units and 500. They're trying to tell you that what we were involved in, what we did, is not what we did. We're like, no, what are you you're trying to tell us the car is yellow when it's blue? We know the car's blue. We bought it. It says it on the, oh, no. If you say it enough times, I guess they think people will believe it. But there are appeal processes available for people, and that's the process. The planning board is a government, just like the city council. It's not elected, but is a government body. So is the conservation commission. They have, so people have the right of appeal, they have a right to speak at public meetings, and we're not in opposition at all to that. What we are in opposition to is trying to change the narrative is what we're in opposition to. We're in opposition of attacking everybody, everybody. I don't care if it's a consultant. I don't care if it's the proponent. I don't care who it is. Me, that's fine.
planning
I don't care.
board.
Planning board, planning chair, everything. Everybody is under attack. And that's the part that I take opposition with. You could be in opposition to something. It's no problem. But what's happening is the reason they want to get rid of ease the MEPA review process, some of these things, is because it's becoming so difficult to do anything, and it's becoming so costly. And the governor is keenly aware of what's going to happen in the state if this continues. Anyway, did we forget anything?
So this is what I'd like to add to this conversation.
Yes.
We have amazing.
And it's okay. You attack me, that's fine. You start attacking the people that work for the city. These are hired people that work for. It's sort of, there's a junction here, I believe, in my opinion. We've never had people show up at meetings in my 32 years and start attacking the grant writer or the planning director. Personally attack. Go ahead.
So we have amazing teams within the city. I may be the grant administrator and I may manage the money, but getting to that point, whether it's DPW or the rec department, if it's open space or playgrounds, every department plays a role in bringing projects to the grant administrator, and then we apply for grants and we administer them. And as I explained to the city council earlier this year, we've gotten to the point where that agencies, if they have extra money, they know that they can rely on us to spend it.
We have a incredible relationship and trust with state agencies, all of them. We have built an incredible rapport with them professionally. They know that if they give us a grant, because there are parts of the state where they give a grant, nothing happened. They're like, yeah, just give us the money, something will happen. And there's nothing there. In fact, the infrastructure, the pipe is in the ground, there's nothing happening. So there were a lot of that. Or parks that were built, but the town didn't come up with their portion of it. There was no match.
Or they're now a mess. They're
a mess.
left.
They never took care of them.
Yep.
They never maintained them. And that doesn't happen here.
Nope.
And this hurts us, though. When people make these accusations, what happens now is, let's face it, this is in the Globe. I got calls from TV stations about this, Boston TV stations. I get asked about this constantly, and it erodes trust from the citizenship. And if there's anybody out there that wants to ask us anything, we would be glad. If you would like to have a forum where you would like to ask the city council some questions along with us, I invite you to jump in on that. Maybe we can have a forum at City Hall in the auditorium, and the city councilors can answer the questions from us. So we'd be asking the questions. They could then answer them. Because right now, it's just been us answering questions. They haven't answered any questions. It's us. It's the grant writer having to defend herself. It's the planning director that's had to defend herself. It's everybody else defending themselves. So this is a checks and balance system, not a check. It's a checks and balance system. So we have built a great rapport with administrations that are both Democrat and Republican. And so people can say, well, that's the politics. But not at all. I'm probably the only elected official who's ever asked to be on MassDOT Transportation Board that's west of Concord.
Yeah.
And we have a voice. And it was the governor's office under a new administration that called and said, hey, would you like to stay on? When everybody else said, no, she's not going to keep you on. And now I'm the person that's been on the board the longest, serving both Democrat and Republicans. So we built this trust here in the city, and now it's under question because, we want to continue to get these grants. This may hurt us now. They may say, they had a lot of questions about this, and, there was a high profile, and, anyway.
$200 million in 19 years that our team has brought in grant funds. We've been audited by the state, federal, and our own auditors. Never a finding
Right.
in all those years. And all
Perfect
that money,
record.
including the American Rescue Plan funds, which other communities
Are in
didn't
trouble
do so
on,
well
and
with.
used it for fixed costs.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother
Yep,
issue
yep.
here. Never had this issue here.
Yep.
And just to, are we done here pretty much? Okay. And just to kind of go over this, we've been talking about the Orchard Hill Park project, which started many, many years ago with a vision for the city, even prior to our administration, with a vision that here's all this land, it's right off the highway. We've got to do something with this property. There's industrial property behind it, but you can't get to it. There are all these different factors. There's no infrastructure, and it took a lot of people to put these projects together. And then a number of zoning changes were made over the years, and most recently a zoning change passed by 2/3 of the city council, and then all of this started. And again, you're against the project. It should be by right. It shouldn't be. That's fine. Everybody's got their opinion about it. And so now there's a push to reverse all of this. Reverse all of this, which is going to take a lot of votes to do. And I think that if this happens, then it affects zoning pretty much anywhere in the city. And I can say with certainty that even as lean as we run the city, and I think last year's budget we brought on a new person. That was the, I thought we were going to do it with a grant. We didn't end up doing it with a grant because there wasn't a grant for it. To bring on the clinical social worker to the police department, which was badly needed. I think the year before we added Luke, compliance, code enforcement, which thank God we did. Other than that, we did paramedics slowly over the years, and a lot of that money that we take in from ambulance is what funds these programs. Other than that, we've kept everything lean. We haven't added a whole lot of new positions, but the state mandates are constantly at us, and requirements and compliance issues. So like every other business, like your household, you need more money to keep the engine going. It's growth in the city. And last year we were at barely $1 million in new growth. And $1 million may seem like a lot of money, but when your whole 2.5 increase goes directly to the schools, and I'm not saying it shouldn't, I'm just saying these are the logistics of it all. Any city, and what's happening now is cities are beginning to get in trouble, and there's a whole report issued by the Mass Municipal, and not able to keep up any longer. And I think if we fall to this kind of reaction, then zoning is going to change according to a select group of people in town, and then nothing will happen, and we won't get the growth, and then your taxes will go up. And you won't see increased services. They'll go up. I mean, they'll go up beyond Prop 2.5 is what they will. And then people really won't be able to afford to live here. And it's just that's the reality of it. I speak to a number of municipal leaders at orientations and coaching and buddy system, and we go through this all of the time. And there are communities in the state that pay not to have development. They don't even want cell towers, but they pay dearly. And it forces the people who were the very fabric of the community out because they can no longer afford the taxes, even if they own the house outright. So these are all the things that are circulating. So anyway, this is the facts from the very people involved. Taking excerpts from a paragraph or a sentence from the minutes of a meeting is not testimony to the people who were in the meetings involved in the process. So we hope this helped. I can't tell you, I know this is almost going on an hour and a half here, but I can't tell you the amount of people that wanted me to speak more to this. We started off at our morning briefings, and the more they heard, the more they wanted to hear, the more they asked me to talk more about it. And the more I realized in conversation with others that if you allow this narrative to be changed. The city's reputation will be hurt, not just from grant people, but from the very people who live here who say, well, what's going on here? Is it the days of Al Capone or something? Is something going on here? We let the facts speak for themselves. You saw the video. Questions were asked. Can you clarify this? And then re-explain. So this is what this means? And then later to go on and say, well, we didn't understand. The council didn't understand what they were voting for. We were tricked. You fraudulently put in for a grant. No, we didn't. We explained that to you. Yet you keep saying it over and over and over. So some others have some questions to be answered. If I have to call a special meeting of the city council, we'll do that. We'll get into that presence. So the people that were very accused people, who were accused behind an area of gates that people aren't allowed to ask. So you go to a council meeting and you want to say, can I ask a question? They'll say, sorry, you can't. That's the rules of the council. You can't ask a question. You mean I can't ask the city council? Well, when is there a time when the city council meets when you can ask questions? Well, I could call a meeting, a special meeting, to speak on any issue at any time. I think I will. And maybe we'll finally get to the bottom of this and get some answers as to why the same message was repeated over and over and over and over when all of the facts and information are submitted. Well, I feel better, and I hope the people that have asked me to give you more information find this interesting but informative. That's the most important thing. And thank you for watching. Thank you, Wendy, for putting a lot of this together. And as I said, as we started to talk about this project and realized this thing goes back decades. We're talking 5 decades development on this project. Now, as I said, the world changed. First, we're looking at all industrial, then mixed use. So some people are under the impression that you could never build you couldn't build apartments up in that area. That's not true. Back to 2013, you could build, was it 13?
03.
03.
When they changed the mixed
Okay,
use.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
03, you could build apartments on this very piece of land. Is that correct? I want to make sure I'm correct.
I'm looking.
We're looking. But thanks for watching. And when people talk about transparency, it can't be a word used to say they haven't been transparent when we're the only ones submitting documents, where we're the only ones factually showing that the very words and information that you're sharing with the general public are contrary to the very people that put these things together and the facts.
03 was permit mixed use development
In 03.
in 03
And that allowed,
within an industrial zone.
right, and that allowed apartments,
Yep.
correct? All right, so there you have it. Okay, thanks for watching. You'll probably take 2 or 3 days to watch this thing if you're watching in increments. I hope you understand it. It's a special edition of our Inside Leominster, and thank you. I'm just amazed at how many people were like, yeah, you keep telling the truth. You keep putting that proper information out there because it's an interesting story, and it clears up all this misinformation that keeps getting spread. So we started with 300 units, went to 5, then it was 1,000. That didn't get public all shook up. So then it went to 1,500, and I think it maxed out at 2,000 units now. That's not the case. Anyway, thanks for watching.